Hello and welcome to this feature interview. I'm Kelsey Hubbard. Over the past couple weeks, there has been much activity here on campus, partaking in groups on campus that have called themselves Insights. This group promotes discussion and action about diversity and respect on campus. On February 3rd, Insights started their campaign by holding a walkout protest on the steps of Wiley Hall, followed that night by a forum. They have continued their efforts here on campus since. I have President Drake Shum with me on set. Thank you so much for joining me on set.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Kelsey.
So you sent out an email about 2 hours before the protest, and you weren't even on campus. How did you hear about it so fast?
Well, even though people think maybe I'm not, in touch when I'm off campus, I am. I read my emails constantly. I was at a meeting in Washington that was important to the college, and I heard that there might be some problems, and that there might be a protest. So I said, why don't we have a forum as soon as I get back from Washington? And so I sent out an email saying we'd have a forum at 7 o'clock that night, and I barely got there. My plane actually was a little late, but I got there on time.
Well, that's very good. I understand that at the forum they had a list of demands that they wanted. What kinds of things were they demanding?
Well, there were a list of demands that were presented on the steps of Wiley Hall earlier, and so that list was just, I had that list. It had been given to me right as I came into the forum. But members of the group, Insights, and that's INCITES. I noticed on the monitor it was INSITES. But this is a kind of a national movement. There is a group, there are groups like this all over the country where students who are kind of concerned about the atmosphere on campus, whether it's welcoming for every student, whether every student at the campus feels like they belong, like been accepted by the admissions office, but do they feel like they belong? And so those demands were presented to me that night too. And the way I began by saying, whether you've been on campus 6 days or 60 years, I think everyone here knows that we don't demand things of each other. I mean, I don't demand things of students, and so students really shouldn't demand things of me. But I said, I can understand why an issue is of such urgency that you would use the word demands. And I said, and so let's appoint a task force and begin to look at some of the concerns that you've raised and see whether or not we can begin to take some action.
Right. And I understand in one of your emails you also talked about how you were a little disappointed about the forum. What did you mean by that?
My disappointment was that they didn't feel like they could come to me first with the demands before they went public with television and with the media and so forth. But, people do what they think is important to get people's attention. And so, I got over that very quickly. I mean, the point is, how can we make progress? How can we make the campus more welcoming?
Definitely. And moving in about a week later, math comm professor Delilah White actually resigned because of this. And she came to you. What was that like, having her come to you about this and just saying that?
Well, you said she resigned because of this. I'm not really sure why she resigned. She asked to speak to Dean Haney and me, and she came in and she just said that she wanted to be released. Those were her words, released from her contract. And we asked her, are you sure there's no way we can work this out, whatever this was? And she said no. She said, I think her words were exactly, I feel like I need to, leave and restore my soul. I think those were her words, which made me very sad because we'd worked hard to recruit her to come to Emory and Henry. We'd asked her to be our Founders Day speaker last year. She said wonderful things about Emory and Henry during her speech. And so I guess I just didn't understand why we wouldn't be able to work things out and to make progress on some of the issues that were of concern to her.
Definitely.
But when someone makes a decision, you can't tell them, oh, you can't make that decision.
Right. And since that part of the Insights thing, there's been a task force, and there's been two people who are in charge of it. One of them was a mass comm professor, Professor Finney. There's also someone else who's come on campus who.
Yeah, Professor Finney I asked him to be one of the co-chairs because he was one of the 4 or 5 faculty members who actually came to the forum that night. And I think he said some things, I think, that helped me with some of my insight on what was going on. And I thought it would really be good for us to have a professor on our campus be a co-chair, but also have an alumna and Brooklyn Sawyers, who's on our Board of Trustees, a new member of our Board of Trustees who's Assistant U.S. District Attorney for the area between Knoxville and coming east toward Virginia. And she is one of the sharpest people I know, and very concerned about these issues herself. And so I asked her to serve, I asked him to serve, they both agreed. We began to put the task force together, and kind of thinking that your next question might be about the task force itself. We tried to choose some students who were members of Insights. We tried to choose some students who were not members of Insights, but who we thought, you know, might have some concerns about this. We tried to make it a diverse group in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual preference, and so forth. Because when you talk about diversity, you're talking about a lot of things, and we want all students, no matter where they come from, we have accepted them as part of this campus community. Everyone needs to feel like they belong, and if people don't feel like they belong, there's something we need to do to make that better. So none of the people who I asked turned me down. We had some more alumni and some more faculty who agreed to be on it. But I think we now have about 15 people, and it's hard to work with more than 15 on a task force. There must have been, I would say, 20 to 40 people who were either nominated or who volunteered to serve. And so we had a great group to choose from. We could have chosen a lot of different people. But this is the group that's going forward with the task force.
Definitely. And just one final question. What kinds of things will this task force be doing?
They'll be looking at all the concerns that the Insights group suggested were concerns. And then because of the people who are on it who were not members of Insights, there may be other concerns that are raised about, you know, whether we're diverse enough, which we aren't, whether we're equitable with everyone who's here, you know, and whether we're an inclusive community. And I think it's really important that we tackle all of those. And if you're a great liberal arts college, you're going to tackle those not just in one task force, but from year to year, going forward, always checking, always making sure. And a perfect example of this is when I was in Atlanta. I was in a diversity training. I was a member of a golf club in the worst part of Atlanta. And I assumed that they had members of another race and other religions. And I checked. I did an inventory of all the clubs that I belonged to make sure that they were inclusive clubs. Found out they were not, and that the owners of the club said, "Over our dead bodies, will we take anyone else other than white males?" I said, "I'm out of here." And I quit my membership and left that club and went to a club that was diverse, because I don't want to be in an environment where everybody is just like me. I mean, how boring is that? I mean, I don't think I'm necessarily boring, but a lot of Jake Shrums would probably be pretty boring.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me on campus and talk about this.
My pleasure, Kelsey. Thank you for inviting me.
This has been your feature interview. I'm Kelsey Hubbard with President Jake Shrum.